I won't say anything more stupid than I would normally say. Let me turn my phone off. And it doesn't ring.
Yeah, Thursday when it.
Okay, turn everything off.
Anyway. It's hilarious. It's awesome.
Thank you. Get it all set up.
Yeah. I don't ever think about it. Is it? Yeah, I'm like. And then of course you just want that brand.
Yeah, we got it all set up and we got the Zoom set up and good thing you have somebody who's video specialist because
Every room set up differently. You don't
Yeah.
have the same equipment all over.
Yeah.
I mean, the classrooms are the same, you know.
Oh, everything's
Instructions go in one and it.
yeah.
You just don't know.
Usually I go to the union when I get something quick, I need more. Nobody buys it all the time. That makes sense. Well, I mean, lately we never come up with campus.
People loving people. It's the kindest people.
I work for services.
Okay.
So any of the professional services at the university, is Michael Allen, good friend of mine and.
Good morning, sir. You look stylish. I like that look.
No, I was trying to match you. It's gonna be hard though.
You're cooler than me, so we can get away with whatever you want to wear. If I don't dress up, people think, oh, what's this guy?
Tim was saying it says somewhere that the zone is where this is.
Oh, so we should probably go tell people.
Well-
they're coming to the-
Well, the zone is locked up, so if they got in, they probably, so.
We just didn't have somebody standing out.
So where did it say, so the invite said here, did the.
Well,
was
the
banner?
video marquee,
Yeah.
that had Bill's face on it, that's the zone.
See, that will scare people away. Good morning, how you doing?
Good.
You're here to hear the same thing over?
I am ready to go.
All right.
First thing in the morning.
Good morning, how you doing?
You know, I'm sales leader, so Josh is on my team, but, yeah. The whole, you know, from, top side agree, I think we should come together, do lab,
He's kind of the man of the moment, so.
Yeah, well, hopefully he knows how to run the tech.
pretty exciting, new places, having an IT background, product helps as well.
I'm gonna let you introduce yourself.
That's fine. Yeah, that's
I
good.
mean, I'll meet you.
No, I talked to, Josh that I would introduce myself and then just jump right into it.
Okay.
Less,
So you don't even need me.
I mean, if you want to say something at the beginning, you can.
May I, just real quick?
Yeah.
This is like, cause this is the first time, we've ever had a speaker.
Oh, really?
You're our first one.
Well, I feel
That's why
honored.
That's why there's this chaos, so, 'cause I don't know what I'm doing, so.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I don't know what I'm doing, but this is great. So yeah, do whatever you want to do, and don't worry about introducing me, other than here's Bill, and I'll give maybe basically a 30-second here's who I am, and just kind of summarize it. What I'm going to cover is basically based on my class at Iowa State.
Okay.
So they get a,
Eric, are you by any chance looking at the stream to see if it's live? Is it anybody looking at the stream?
that'd be useful. Hate to be giving a presentation and talking and then going into the ether somewhere. All this brilliant wisdom will be lost. Har, har, har. Yeah. I don't know where he went either. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Well, you outdress me, look more cool than I do, so. With, this way I look very,
That's the professor package.
today I'm Professor Schmarzo, today I'm not. When I go to a ponytail, you know it's time to stick me in the ground.
But if he's longer is like.
Yeah, I kind of like it, so it looks like I'm not quite in control. You know who my model is Doc Brown from the movie Back to the Future, with the hair like that. That's what I want to look like.
That's what I'm saying.
Is it on? If anybody's online, can they see the,
Oh,
all right,
you can hear
so
all-
just go ahead and kick it off then. Let's do this.
All right, well, then we'll get started.
Yes, you can see it over there. The camera's right over there. So you can't hide.
Okay.
You can run, but you can't hide.
This is, for us, an inaugural event of sorts. This is the very first time we've ever had a speaker come in and do a talk for us. So I'm not gonna try to introduce him, I'll let him introduce himself. I just wanna say a big thank you to Dell. We've got a big Dell contingency here. Folks who worked really hard with us and for us to help make the talk happen, and they have provided, they provided a lot of resources in getting, our advanced computing resources up and running. So I'm not gonna talk a lot. We're gonna introduce Bill Schmarzo, and he's gonna talk and introduce himself. So please,
Yeah,
come over here.
thanks.
Take off.
Thank you. So, good morning, everybody who's here and online somewhere. So I'm at Dell Technologies. I'm the customer AI and data innovation strategist. I work with customers to try to help them address this problem of how to get value from their data. But what I'm going to cover today is is basically a shrunk down version of the class I teach. I'm currently teaching at Iowa State University. And the class is designed to prepare non-data scientists for how to get value from their data. In my role at Dell, I get a chance to spend a lot of time talking to chief data officers. And the common theme that I hear when I talk to chief data officers is they don't know how to get value from data. And having that conversation with data scientists doesn't help, because they don't always know how do you define and create value. So this is designed for everybody else. And the roles that you need to play as a citizen of data science and understanding how to get value from data. So again, 60-minute version of my 36-hour class. If I put you through the 36-hour class, you'd be bored to death. Most of my students are anyway. So let's just jump right into this thing. This phrase, these 5 words set the stage for our entire value conversation. And I know that there's a lot of folks who like to debate the data is like oil. You got to engineer it, you got to refine it, you got to mine it, all this other sort of stuff you talk about it. And that's kind of navel gazing, to be honest with you. It's not really relevant. What's really relevant in these 5 words is that in the same way that oil was the catalyst that drove the economic growth in the 20th century, that data is going to be that catalyst that drives the economic growth in the 21st century. Then when we talk about data, don't talk about it as if it's something that comes out of IT. Don't talk about it as if it's IT's problem or it's a byproduct of the business. Data is an economic asset. And the sooner we start to embrace economic concepts around what data can do for us, the more straightforward, I won't say easy, the more straightforward it will be for us to figure out how to get value from data. Now, this game of data as an economic asset is already being played out right in front of us. And what's happened over the past 45 years is that the most valuable companies in the world have transitioned from companies that were purveyors of products and services to companies that are purveyors of knowledge. And what they're doing is that they're mining their customer product services and operational insights, these predicted propensities, and they're embedding them into their products and services to be more relevant, more meaningful, and drive improved outcomes. Right? What I like about this chart in particular, so we do see this transition. And by the way, the 4 of the next 5 on this list are also companies that are focused on how do I leverage data to create more value. But look at the white and red lines. This is a problem. We teach our students along with a finance mentality. And a lot of that finance mentality looks at value creation from a tangible assets perspective, things that I can touch. And what's happened is this asymptotic growth of intangible assets, these insights about your customers and your products and your services and your operations. These companies here have mastered this because they've leveraged what I call the data innovation index to create new sources of value. So people see this and they say, oh my gosh, we got to be like these people. We must become data-driven. Data-driven, right? You hear it like, people walk around, it's like in Game of Thrones, and they're walking down the street saying, shame, 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 right? This is the data-driven, data-driven, right? The problem with data-driven is that organizations are actually failing at becoming data-driven. This research from the New Vantage Partners, which has just recently validated that the number of companies, the number of organizations, the number of people who are becoming successful at becoming data-driven is falling off. Companies are giving up. Nearly 10% of the companies in their survey have given up on trying to become data-driven. So think about this. Data is an economic asset. These companies on the right-hand side of that chart are creating more sources of value from their data, but being data-driven fails. Seems like one of these sort of things, but it's not. Data is not the end point. Data is a means to the end point. And when we focus on becoming data-driven, we take our focus, we take the impetus we're trying to create on something that's much more valuable, which is how do we as an organization create value? This is a hard conversation because the process starts by you looking introspective to your organization and say, what are the things that we do as an organization? What are the things we do at University of Memphis to create value? And the very first starting point of this process is understanding how you define and measure your value creation effectiveness. Student retention, faculty recruiting, curriculum optimization. There's things that you do across the university that are designed to create value for your stakeholders. And we must start the conversation by saying, okay, what's valuable to us? It's not what's valuable to people who look like me. That might be interesting, but what's valuable to us? What is it drives us? What is our passion, our mission about trying to make things happen? And then when I have this question, I want to ask two other things. I want to understand, what are the desired outcomes? That is, if this is my initiative, my opportunities, what are my desired outcomes? That is, what does good look like if we do this well? And then what are the measures against which, or the KPIs or metrics against which I'm going to measure the effectiveness of that initiative? Some fundamental questions. What's valuable to us? What does good look like through desired outcomes? And how are we going to measure success? But then we need to go down one more level. I mean, that's nice to do that at a high level to sort of frame the conversation, but then we need to diverge the conversation by looking across all of our different internal and external stakeholders who are impacted by that initiative. And then ask, what's in it for them? And why is this important to them? What are their desired outcomes? What are the key decisions they need to make to support that business initiative? And how are they going to measure success? From this, we get a robust understanding of not only how do we create value as an organization, but how that value creation process affects our key stakeholders. From that, what you're going to find is you're going to identify a series of use cases. And use cases typically are clusters of decisions around desired outcomes and the KPIs against which we're going to measure success. And the power of use cases is that around use cases, I can drive the business and operational stakeholders in my data and analytic teams to collaborate, keyword, collaborate, to try to address and or optimize that use case. Now, there's one really important point here. I'm going to hit it again later on. These use cases are tethered to this business initiative. This is not a random set of use cases. It's not somebody saying, hey, step one, go inventory all our use cases. No, that's not how you want to start. Because most use cases are somebody's pet project and may or may not actually link back to something that's important. So we're going to identify use cases, and use cases are going to be the foundation for how we're going to build out the organization's data and analytics capabilities. We're going to exploit the economies of learning, because in knowledge-based industries, the economies of learning are more powerful than the economies of scale. And then eventually you need to have an architecture capabilities to support all that. But no big bang. No big bang. Don't spend, $20 million and spend, 3 years and hundreds of people's lives trying to build something that at the end you only hope something of value squirts out. No, we're not going to hope for value. We're going to drive value because we know how our organization defines and measures value. All right. Now, with that as the backdrop, as the focus point, there's some unique aspects of data and analytics that allow us to do things from an economics perspective that we cannot do with any other asset. So there's a couple of little gotchas here, a couple of little, not call them gotchas, kind of a little secret sauce things. Number one is the data economic multiplier effect. You all know the economic multiplier effect was actually one for data. And it basically says you have an asset that never depletes, never wears out, and if architected properly in a shareable environment, properly governed, that same data set can be used across an unlimited number of use cases at zero marginal cost. We've never seen an asset like this. The companies on the far right-hand side, they have cracked the code on this sometimes many years ago. And we're just starting to figure it out. Wait a second. This is an economic asset. Now, I do want to make a little lecture point here about the difference between accounting and economics. All right. We're going to go back old school. We're going to go back to Wealth of Nation, Adam Smith, 1776, right? A good year, by the way. And we think about the difference between accounting, which is how we teach most of our students how to determine value. Accounting is a methodology for valuation that's based on what you paid to acquire something. So you got me here and I got an Uber driver here, and we both go out and buy a $40,000 car. From an accounting perspective, the value of that car to both of us is $40,000. Economics is a value in use methodology for determining value. So that $40,000 car for me that's sitting in my driveway in Des Moines, Iowa, covered with snow and ice, is not worth $40,000, probably closer to 12. right? Maybe 10. The Uber driver, on their hand, is using their car to drive people around, make money, deliver goods, make money. And when they're not driving it, they could be leasing or renting it out to their friends who can drive it and make money. So value in use is an economics concept. And we start thinking about this as an economics conversation, then we start seeing things like this data economic multiplier effect pop up. But there's one other thing here that happens too, and that's how we use AI. We can actually use AI to create assets, products, services, policies, procedures that can actually continuously learn and adapt and depreciate in value the more they're used, not depreciate. Think about the Tesla, right? In it sits a AI agent called FSD, the fully self-driving module. It's a learning device. And every corner it turns, every time it passes another car, every time it avoids a pothole or doesn't avoid a pothole, it is learning. It's constantly learning, so it becomes more reliable, more predictive, more safe, and ultimately more valuable. So we can leverage AI to not only help make this car or our vacuum or our policies and procedures or our trains or our tractors more appreciated in value the more they're used, but what happens is we actually leverage the law of compounding, which says that small series of improvements across a wide range of use cases actually can create a material impact that we probably can't achieve from a big bang approach, because the economies of learning in knowledge-based industries are more powerful than economies of scale. So keep that in the back of mind. We have two things, right? Data economic multiplier effect and our ability to use AI, architect AI, to build AI models, to engineer AI models that can continuously learn and adapt, sometimes with minimal human intervention. How do we apply this? Well, it starts by understanding that every organization is governed by the economic value curve. And what the economic value curve states is that across a large number of independent variables, I'm trying to influence and optimize a particular dependent variable or outcome. So let me kind of explain this with an example. Let's say that I'm a large manufacturing plant, and I'm trying to make sure my plant doesn't go down. Plants goes down, I'm not producing things, not making money, all kinds of bad things happen, right? So I spend more and more time on maintenance, replacing parts, doing maintenance on them, fixing them, et cetera, and with the goal of improving uptime. Unfortunately, there's this law of diminishing returns, which is a fact because it's a law, so it's got to be a law, it's got to be real. It says at some point in time, the more money you spend on these independent variables and the cost of maintenance in this example, the less and less impact you have on the dependent variable or the outcome. That you can spend more and more money, but eventually you get less and less for it. In fact, at some point you actually can crowd it out. You can spend so much money that actually the results go the wrong direction. Well, how do we address this? I mean, it's a law of diminishing returns. How am I going to violate this? Requires a different sort of mindset and how we're going to approach this conversation. We're going to leverage a technique that I was part of uncovering at Yahoo called nanoeconomics. And what it is instead of making decisions on the parts that need to be replaced based on the average life cycle or average lifespan of those parts, I'm building very individualized predictive models on each and every one of the entities that comprise my manufacturing plant. So I know at an individual level, the remaining useful life, their power production, their power consumption, and when ideally is the right time to replace them. Instead of replacing a compressor every 3,000 hours, because on average it breaks down in 3,000 hours, if I wait for on average to break down, I've missed half of them, have already broken down, and I've replaced half that don't need to be broken, need replaced, right? But instead, I get at a very granular level and make these prescriptive decisions to know exactly when to replace a part, what inventory am I going to need, what consumables am I going to need, what technicians with what kind of training at what time, how do I schedule that? I can optimize every aspect of that decision and the management of that to actually do more with less, to actually spend less on maintenance because I'm much more focused, much more efficient. and actually drive an improvement in uptime. And it's built on this concept called nanoeconomics, right? Which is basically the economic theory of how do we build predictive models on the behaviors and performance of each of our individual entities, whether they're a human or a device. So think about your students, right? Think about if you're a hospital yesterday, we were talking about patients and doctors and nurses. I can get very prescriptive at an individual level. What's interesting about this conversation, this is the big data, this is the heart of the big data conversation, but most organizations missed the importance of the big data conversation. They thought big data was about volume, not about volume. It's about granularity. It's about the fact that at Yahoo, I had 500 million visitors a day coming to my website, and I had less than a second to figure out what's their value, how much am I willing to bid for them, what are they interested in, what ad to show them, and where to put that ad. Now, if I base that decision based on averages, looking at their stream and what kind of laptop they're coming from, or what part of the country they're coming from, I would have gotten, at best, average results, and we'd have been out of business very quickly. So what did we do? Well, for every one of those 500 million visitors, I knew what sites you visited, the sequence of how you visited. I knew what sites you didn't visit. I knew what ads you clicked on. I knew what ads you didn't click on. I knew who your friends were. I knew what keywords you used. And I built detailed analytic scores on every area that I thought you were interested in. Vacations, cars, coffees, grocery stores. I had a predictive score on every one of these dimensions across every individual. Kept it on your cookie, by the way. So when you came to my site, I could read it instantly and knew that you're interested at a certain level in, for example, vacations. If you're interested in vacations and I show you an ad on vacations and you click through to the vacation site, that typically paid me $17 a click. Cars was even better. If I knew you're interested in vacations, it totally impacted how I'm going to bid for your visit, what ad I'm going to show you. If you're interested in coffee, you're worth like a fraction of a penny. I didn't really care. But if you're interested in cars or vacations, some of these big ticket items, I knew about it because it was in your cookies, and I had built a score on each and every one of you. This is how Amazon works. This is how Netflix works. This is how all these companies work. They have a digital profile on each and every one of you that measures what you like and the level of like. And they monitor that to see if your likes change. So here's what we can do with this nanoeconomics. I can build these scores. So imagine this being this is a hospital one, but at Yahoo, this was a cookie, right? At a hospital, at every individual patient level, I can build out areas that I'm interested in to know about them. Areas that I want to be able to predict what they're likely to do so I can better serve them. I want to know, for example, their diet score, their exercise score, their stress score. I want to manufacture that into at-risk scores, at risk of having a stroke, at risk of having a heart attack, at risk of dying from COVID if you caught it. By the way, that at risk of dying from COVID, if you caught it, I had an undergrad class at Menlo College with a spreadsheet build the framework for how you would build that score. Guess who they talked to identify the variables and metrics that were most likely predictors of your dying from if you caught COVID. They interviewed the nurses. They interviewed the doctors. They interviewed the technicians. They didn't waste their time with executives who didn't know what the hell was going on. They didn't waste time with some of the big medical organizations who didn't really know what was going on. They talked to the front lines. And we're going to talk about the importance of bringing the front lines into this process. They're the secret sauce. They're the ones who can tell you the variables and metrics that might be able to better predictors of performance. So if I have these scores and I can monitor them and see if they change, I can use these scores on a use case by use case basis to drive precision decisions. I can reduce hospital-acquired infections. I can reduce unplanned readmissions. I can improve quality of patient care. I can improve medical effectiveness, right? I can improve everything because I'm making decisions not on averages, but on the propensities of each individual patient, matching them with the right nurse, match them with the right doctor for the right treatment at the right location. You think all these things start converging together. That's the heart of nanoeconomics. And that's how we change the economic value curve. That's how we take and create new sources of value. We do more with less. So how do we create this culture? Because I talked earlier about how do we bring the front lines into this process? Because if we're trying to identify those variables and metrics that are better predictors of performance, it's not your data science team is going to know that. I mean, you might have some people who have subject matter expertise, but it's the people in the front lines of customer engagement and operational execution. So what we do is we leverage a technique called design thinking. How many people here have gone through a design thinking class? Okay. Design thinking, which is made popular by Stanford at the Stanford Design School, is a technique for empathizing with your stakeholders and trying to not only understand what the requirements are, but to create a culture of empowerment so they can feel free to ideate, share ideas, be wrong, and learn from being wrong. So this process is very much around empathizing with your stakeholders. And what we talked about early, defining what their point of view is, what they're trying to do, what their desired outcomes are, trying to ideate with them about how do we help them achieve that? How do we build prototypes and learn and test and creating this cycle of rapid iteration, rapid trial, rapid trying, and learning through failure. What was interesting, so I used to live in Palo Alto, so I spent a lot of time, and I can tell you my story of how a senior Google data scientist introduced me to the Stanford Design School later. But what I realized as I was going through the class, having that I was running a data science team, trying to figure out how do I help them be more effective, is that the data science process and the design thinking process were literally different sides of the same coin. That what we were trying to do in data science is exactly what design thinking is able us to do. That we try to understand and empathize at the very front, to understand what we're trying to solve. We synthesize and define, we ideate and ideate, a lot of ideation, a lot of co-creation, a lot of co-collaboration. We try, we tune, we test, and we learn. There's only difference is that one of these is focused on how do I unleash the learning power of machines. The other one is how do I unleash the learning power of humans? The forgotten equation in the AI conversation. So much fascination with AI technology that we're forgetting about the single most important point of innovation isn't here, it's here. How do we unleash that? So this is the methodology I teach at the class. It's an 8-step process. We have every one of these steps has design thinking canvases built into it. It drives the collaboration between our stakeholders on the business side and the data science and analytic teams. It's got economic concepts buried into it. And I only introduce this to you because it's important to have a process that realizes that the data science team and your stakeholders on the business and operational side, it isn't a show up, define, hope something valuable comes out at the end. They're involved in every step of the process. It isn't a show up and throw up. It's a co-design, co-collaborate to get a solution. Let's double click on this first one, for example. This is one of the templates we use called the Value Engineering Canvas. And what it does is it seeks to thoroughly understand the business problem, the business initiative, the thing that we do as an organization to create value. So we use Chipotle in my class because my students know Chipotle, I know Chipotle, and we have a Chipotle party end of the year. So we use this as a model, but they pick companies. We had one class who picked John Deere's challenge in trying to increase EV and hybrid sales. We had one team pick Nike, who was trying to figure out how do they market their sustainability efforts. We had one team who picked NVIDIA and their strategy for how do I increase my gaming console wins, right? They pick a company, they do the research, and they start going through this process. And they're collaborating with both kind of with the stakeholders and with the data science team. And so what we try to do, for example, like I said, we try to identify what are the ideal outcomes for this initiative? What are the benefits, the potential impediments? What are the ramifications if this thing fails? Thinking about failure up front. And in the world of AI, what are the potential unintended consequences if this is successful? We don't necessarily think very well, especially our political leaders. No political comment meant, but given, they don't really think through when they make policy decisions. What are the second and third order ramifications from those policy decisions? So the reason why we go through this brainstorming process And Josh, what's the most important phrase when we go through this process? Right. All ideas are worthy of consideration. One of the key philosophies of design thinking is that all ideas are worthy of consideration. Doesn't mean all ideas are good, but it means you give everybody a voice to share an idea. Because if you don't have enough mind moments, you'll never have any breakthrough moments. So we're trying to create more and more mind moments. So we go through this process, we capture all this thing. There's Post-it notes all over the flip charts. There's, the room is covered with Post-it notes and flip charts and markers and ideation happening like mad. But there is a goal to the madness. And that is what we want to do. For all these different things down here, the ideal outcomes and impediments and failure ramifications, unintended consequences, what are the KPIs and metrics that we can use to try to measure those, to try to monitor those, to in some cases avoid them or mitigate them? All the time here, what you're seeing is this drive to capture very robust set of KPIs and metrics. I want you to put a mental pin in this slide. We're going to come back to it in a second. I'm going to show you why this is so important. Let's talk about AI. What is AI? All right. First off, there is a fundamental change happening in the world of analytics. We've been struggling with the world of monitoring analytics, BI, right, data warehouses. Still, many organizations struggle, but over the past 10, 12 years, we've become much better at optimization, optimizing inventory levels, optimizing marketing campaigns, optimizing customer. We're getting better at optimization using some machine learning, unsupervised machine learning, and regression models and clustering and association rules. We're getting better and better at doing that to optimize key processes, key outcomes. But what's happened in the last couple of years is a new type of analytics. It doesn't seek to optimize as much as it seeks to learn and adapt. Think about how an autonomous car works. And by the way, the technology they're using is this idea called reinforcement learning. It's the technique that Google used to beat Google Go and StarCraft and everything. It's this idea that I can build an environment that's continuously learning and adapting. That's what an autonomous car does. It uses reinforcement learning to continuously learn and adapt. And so we're entering a new phase, which is really closer to what the vision of what AI, this AG, artificial general intelligence is all about. But the idea that I can start building assets, products, services, policies, procedures that can learn and adapt, sometimes with minimal human intervention, is opening up all kinds of doors. And as we know from all the press, all kinds of fears. Right? They're going to take my job. We're going to have terminators here. What's going to happen? So let's understand how this autonomous analytics works. First off, AI starts by understanding what is it you're trying to accomplish and what are your desired outcomes. Sound familiar? Right? What's my intent? And then what are the KPIs and metrics against which I'm going to try to measure that, which find their way into the beating heart of my AI models called the AI utility function. Now, the AI utility function is comprised of all these variables and metrics, fancy formula that says basically the metrics have weights. I've got a wide range of variables and metrics, and I'm going to have weights, and their weights are going to change based on my intent. I'm going to walk you through an example of that. So this is like this constantly learning process here. Every time a car passes another question, every time somebody applies for a credit card loan, every time somebody applies for access to a network password, right? This thing is constantly monitoring and learning and using the variables and metrics to make sure that it makes the right decision at that point in time. And remember, these are point in time decisions. That autonomous vehicle is driving along, is using these variables and metrics to make a decision right now about what to do about passing this car. 10 seconds later, it's going to make a different decision about making a right turn when there's pedestrians there, and the weights are going to change, but the variables don't. So our ability to build and identify a robust set of variables is critical. And this is the opportunity for humanity, because we're looking not at just operational metrics. We're broadening the conversation to look at customer, employee, partner, environment, community, diversity, ethics. All of these variables and metrics must be integrated into the AI utility function. Because in the same way that humans struggle to make decisions and have to balance and trade off of different variables and metrics, so must the AI model. We must build conflict into the AI model so it has to make the same difficult choices that we as humans have to make. Let me walk you through an example. So I won't make you do this, but one exercise I do in the class is we say, what are all the variables and metrics you might want to consider if you're going to go out to eat? And they break them into their teams, and they, lots of ideas popping up, all the ideas are worthy of consideration, and they come up with a pretty robust list, right? Affordability, convenience, outdoor dining, quality of food, employee wages, they're all the kind of things they might want to think about. Again, think about that economic wheel. We're not just looking at operational. And by the way, we're not focused on lagging indicators. AI does a really crappy job of optimizing things that have already happened. We're always looking for leading indicators. So we're looking for all the kind of things here that might impact our choice. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Let's say my intent. It's Wednesday, I just got out of class, I got homework to get to, I just want something quick and cheap. The variables don't change, but the weight of those variables do. If my intent is a quick, cheap, adequate meal, then affordability, convenience, parking, travel distance, promotions, can I get it cheaper, previous experience with that account, these are the variables I'm probably going to weigh more highly, right? Given my intent, these are the variables that are most important, given that intent. But let's say, hey, it's Friday night. I got to take my wife out. I want to kind of impress her. I want to have a date night. Guess what? Ambiance and food quality and the cleanliness and uniqueness and service quality becomes important. Variables haven't changed. What has changed are the weights of those variables based on my intent and my desired goals. So you can see that I'm constantly making trade-offs. Think about the trade-offs you have to make, or at least I have to make, when I go to the store and I'm trying to figure out what kind of cereal to buy. Am I feeling kind of fun and jazzy and buy Captain Crunch, or I'm tapping my belly and saying, well, maybe I better go something like, something a little more healthy like oatmeal, right? I'm constantly, as a human, think about the decisions you make every day. And those decisions are always weighing all the different variables and metrics. Our AI models must do the same thing. Because if they're allowed to optimize without conflict, they make decisions billions of times faster than us, and they'll optimize us right out of existence. We must build conflict. Oh, by the way, there are techniques, mathematical techniques out there that we can use to make sure that AI models can make decisions that conflict with each other. Remember, it comes back to intent. What's important today may be different tomorrow based on my intent. Remember I said that pin? All these variables and metrics across that big wheel we talked about, they're going to find their way into our AI utility function. So the stuff we're doing here to bring in a broad perspective of stakeholders, understand their desired outcomes, their decisions, and the KPIs and metrics are all going to find their way into a massive AI utility function that's going to be constantly making trade-offs as what is the right decision at this moment, given my intent. So the power of bringing people in this process is critical, which leads me to, this is a little sub-track. Generative AI, what does it mean? Right, what does Chat GPT mean to you as a researcher? What does it mean to your students? Well, here's what I tell my students, that the days of being able to advance in life because you can memorize and regurgitate knowledge are over. Chat GPT is much faster and broader at being able to find definitions and theorems and bring it to me. What is going to have to happen for me as an individual to thrive in a world and leverage Gen AI is understanding, how do I apply that knowledge? It's not the memorization and regurgitation, it's the application. And how do I turn Gen AI into my Yoda, your own digital assistant, right? Gen AI is a marvelous research tool, and using techniques like RAG and other sort of things, you can make Gen AI really effective in doing research for you. But It should not make decisions for you. The autonomous vehicles are not using Gen AI to make their decisions. Right? The engineers who are designing it may be using Gen AI to help them identify other variables and metrics, but it's really still on you as a research assistant. It helps you to analyze and find data. It's a powerful tool if you realize it's not a one-off question and answer. I'm going to ask you to embrace your inner Socrates, the Socratic method of asking more and more questions. So if you have a question about, hey, ChatGPT, tell me about the situation, and it gives you an answer back, you want to start probing. You want to ask it, can you clarify for me? Can you show me the site sources for that? What about this? What other risk might be? You want to use and have a conversation so you make sure the information you get back from your ChatGPT is thoroughly vetted before you start acting on it or putting it into research papers, whatever else you've got. Right? You need to make sure that this is a conversation you're having, and the quality of the Gen AI or ChatGPT responses is entirely dependent on how effective you are in engaging it through a series of prompts. It will do a lot of work for you. It won't replace you. It will make you more effective. Again, think Yoda on my shoulder saying, I love to ask questions. Hey, if I miss something, right? I used to ask a question all the time. I ask a bunch of questions. I'm trying to write a blog on something, right? And I'll say, if I missed anything, and it'll give me a list of things it thinks I've missed. It'll give me 5 things. 4 of them may be hocus pocus. 1 of them might be useful. You know what? I got that one of it, and it didn't cost me anything. It cost me the time to ask that question. Now I can contemplate that and figure it out. We still, more than ever, must practice critical thinking. If there's any one recent lesson for us from a technology perspective and how technology can go so badly sideways, it's social media, and how social media has been used to spread disinformation, drive disenfranchisement across our citizenry. People are angry. They get stuff on social media and they get angry because they don't know the basics, right? The basic critical thinking. Ask for sources. I'm sorry, some person sitting in a mountain in Wyoming off by themselves, their opinion on something isn't nearly as validated as 2,000 writers at the New York Times. It's not. I want sources. You need to think critically. And so in a world of AI, this becomes even more important. And in fact, the mistakes we made with social media, I think, has prepared us for a technology that's potentially much more dangerous, which is AI, and preparing us to think sure we're thinking through, how do we use AI? What are the variables and metrics I'm going to include in that? Who are the stakeholders that need to be involved in that process so that my AI is delivering more relevant, more meaningful, more responsible, and more ethical outcomes? That is the goal. And so maybe we can say, thank God we broke our pick on social media. We're still fighting our way through that social media disaster, but this could have been even worse. How do we create citizens of data science? How do we make sure that everybody in the organization is involved in this process? How do we make certain that we don't have the same results with disenfranchisement with AI that we have with social media? Well, first off, mandatory reading for all my students. This is a marvelous book. I wish I had written it. I particularly love the title. Kathy O'Neill wrote a book called Weapons of Math Destruction. Because people have been asking, well, AI is coming, right? And she's like, no, AI is here today, and it's already being used to negatively impact people. We're building models that do not have the right numbers of diversity of variables and metrics to ensure that we're delivering meaningful, relevant, responsible, and ethical outcomes. We see bias in employment decisions, healthcare, housing, college admission, credit card, right? We're seeing bias, and she does a marvelous job. She's got a really great TED Talk on YouTube, well worth listening to, right? How these algorithms, no one knows what's behind them. No one's aware that algorithms will be used to impact their life. right? We're operating in the dark here. It isn't that AI is coming, folks. Dang it. AI is already here. And it's impacting important swaths of our society in very negative ways. We must address this. And to address this, we need to think about, the challenge with confirmation bias of only being fed the same information over and over again, not being fed the other side's opinion and perspectives. And I talked about the unintended consequences. My favorite unintended consequence example is the SS Eastland. They're going to build a boat that's so safe, but they're going to put a whole bunch of lifeboats on the boat to make it so safe. And he put so many lifeboats on it that it gets top heavy and it topples over and 800 people die. Oops. Now tell me that somebody, an engineer, couldn't look at that and say, wait a second, become Tom Hanks in the movie Big. Wait a second, I don't get it. That's going to cause a problem. This happens when you don't broaden the perspectives of the people who are bringing into this process. This should have never happened. These things should have never happened if we had more people who were involved, empowered to be in this process. And by the way, the AI Bill of Rights that came out of the White House and the stuff that just came recently out of the EU, do not expect that our government, who can barely balance the budget, is going to fix this problem for us. It's up to us. It's up to us to take that responsibility to make certain we're involved in this process. There are some aspects I teach in my class about what do I think it means to be literate about data, about AI and data literacy. You need to understand how your data is being collected. You need to understand how analytic models are uncovering insights about you and using that to persuade or manipulate you. You need to understand how you can use this information to make better decisions using critical thinking. We need to understand some basics in statistics so we prove the odds of making good decisions. By the way, 11% of the people in the US don't wear seatbelts. And the stats show that in a car accident, your chance of survival in a car accident double by wearing a seatbelt. 11% of people don't wear a seatbelt. You know how hard it is to not wear a seatbelt in a car? It's a pain in the ass, right? But as we break this thing, we know that ethics is the beating heart of our literacy program. It's the beating heart. But if we don't empower our culture, that ethics, none of these things matter if it's done in a vacuum, if everybody can't participate. So we need to think about, what does it mean to be a citizen? Think about the challenge to being a citizen. Being a good citizen isn't a passive process. Being a good citizen is something that you need to step up. You need to be involved. You need to not only get out and vote, but maybe campaign. Make sure your voice is heard. Being a good citizen requires you as an individual to step up. And guess what? In the AI space, same thing holds true. You have to be responsible for understanding what your role is to make sure that your voice is heard. And if your voice is not being heard, golly, make sure it is. Write to people, call people, get involved. You need to have a responsibility to make certain that everybody is involved in this process, that you're reaching out to everybody, even people who you may not agree with, and bring them into the process. Human evolution is driven by diversity of perspectives. It isn't commonality of perspectives that makes us unique and grow. It's the diversity. It's the 1 + 1 = 7. So reach out to people who have different beliefs in you and ask for their rationale and try to understand, how can I leverage that? And then, by the way, you have rights. You have the right to know, to demand to know when an AI model has made a decision to impact you, and you have a right to know what the variables and metrics that were used in that model that made that decision about you. Citizenship is about making sure that everybody, not just the data scientists, not just the business analysts, not just the business stakeholders, but everybody, starting in our grade schools, starting in our middle schools, understand their roles, to be involved, the responsibilities to include others, and the rights to make certain these models are being used to benefit and not hurt people. Last slide. You're probably thinking, thank God, this guy off the stage. If AI has its ability to process huge volumes of data, diverse data sets, to to continuously learn and adapt, we can build these models that get smarter as it goes over time. What's left for humans? Well, I believe in my heart that AI is going to force us to become more human. And what are our natural human traits? Number one, we're born with a natural curiosity, which, by the way, our school systems do everything in its power to rub it out. Standardized classes, standardized curriculum, standardized tests, standardized textbooks. Everything we do is standardized. We get into college, sorry, you got standardized admissions, you got standardized classrooms, you got standardized testing. Everything is standardized. In a world of standardization, AI kicks our butt. Okay? AI kicks our butt. But why not do what humans do naturally? We're very curious, willing to explore, try different things, fail. When I was 5 years old or 6 years old, I was curious about my father's radio, so I took it apart. And I put it back together, and I was very proud of the fact I found 2 parts he didn't need. The radio didn't work, but hey, these parts don't go back, right? And so you leverage that, you nurture that curiosity. In your classrooms, you should be nurturing curiosity, right? It's in our young kids in grade school. Don't rub it out. Curiosity drives imagination, our ability to imagine things, to think beyond the walls we're in today, to look over the edge as far as what might be. If you don't have enough might moments, you'll never have any breakthrough moments. Encourage imagination that leads to creativity and innovation, that allows us to think about not AI as our overlord, but AI as our tool to help us become more effective in delivering more relevant, more meaningful, more responsible, more ethical outcomes. Thanks for your time. Got some questions?
I'll just go ahead and make a note.
All right. Any questions in the room here? I just gave you a fire hose.
Data science piece of it, you know, we want to go directly there first instead of really looking at the human aspect that would drive the data science.
Amen.
Yeah, so I mean, today was really enlightening for me. And I was online initially, and then I said, no, let me go down when I found out it was downstairs. So thank you for this, and quite interesting and informative.
Good. Hope you feel empowered. Anybody else? Was it useful? So here's my homework assignment type question. And you don't have to do this to me, but if you have the gumption, you know how to find me, like Schmarzo. I'm on LinkedIn. Come join me in the party. But I would love to know, what are the 1 or 2 nuggets that you took away from this that you will actually apply? So I gotta be honest with you, as a teacher, I enjoy talking, but I enjoy even more knowing that I learned this and I can leverage this. I learned this and I can do this. I understand how this impacts my role and my job and my vision of the future. So if you've got it into you, find me on LinkedIn, Schmarzo. There's a couple other Schmarzos. They're all related, by the way. So you'll know me from my kids. So if you do have anything you want to share with me, please reach out. Please. There is a very vibrant community on LinkedIn. It's very different than Twitter and Facebook. There's people who are sharing marvelous ideas, who have different perspectives. They don't always agree, and that's okay. Any questions?
Yep, we're good. How do you see healthcare being impacted by AI?
That is a wonderful question. In fact, can I share a slide? Sure. The slide I had shown that I hid, and I'm gonna make us go back to that. Come on, mouse, you can do this. Unhide it. I think healthcare is one of the big winners here. And it gets back to that economic value curve. Oops, you make it go full. Thanks. So you remember that economic value curve of how we reach that point of the law of diminishing returns? For the US, arguably our healthcare system has hit the line of diminishing returns. We're spending more and more money on healthcare and we're getting less and less benefit. In the state of Iowa, our lifetime expectancy over the last 2 years has actually dropped. We've gone in the wrong direction. We've actually gone on that tipping point. Leveraging AI, and in particular, leveraging nanoeconomics of the AI allows us to become much more focused on how we are delivering analytics at an individual level. Think about personalized welfare programs, personalized medicines, how we are helping on an individual basis to drive better outcomes, improve treatments, improve nursing effectiveness, improve doctors, right? We can get, that's okay. I think they can see it. But I think it's a great question. I think healthcare is a place that can benefit. Now, there's all kinds of challenges with healthcare. And that is the fact that there's HIPAA that protects data. There are inaccuracies in the data and how it's captured. A good friend of mine was sharing a story with me, and she was telling me that in their hospital, because of how they're paid by insurance companies and how pharmaceuticals work, that they sometimes re-engineer the drug codes so they get more money. So they're not actually putting in the accurate treatment. They're putting in a treatment that reflects them getting more money. We've optimized around money. And the problem is what it's doing is taking that data that's so valuable that we can learn from and making it worthless. So we have all these kinds of challenges in this space here. And healthcare is a tough industry because under a lot of scrutiny, to make sure that we don't use that data inadvertently, and rightfully so. But if we can crack the code on that and find ways to be more transparent in how we're going to use data and be more accurate in how we're capturing the data to really reflect what's going on, again, healthcare is going to be one of the biggest beneficiaries here. We will do more with less and could dramatically transform what for our country is a major outsource of money that delivers less and less benefit. Yes, sir.
Concerning the healthcare, but from the extent of broader fields of that. Do you think that a possible scenario, future scenario, how likely is the scenario that workers rely more and more on AI and they start losing their critical thinking? They just take with anyone that tells them and they.
Yeah. I think that's a good question. So that is, are there valid concerns across other industries that AI is going to take jobs? Right, and that, and it will, right? Now think about toll booths now. How many toll booths have actual toll booth person in it? Back in the olden days when I was, well, even before me, there used to be, when you made a phone call back in the olden days, you had to call an operator and they would connect you. And Western Electric, which was a research arm of Bell, of AT&T, did a research and realized in order to support the rapid growth in telco space, in the telephone space, that every 1 in 2 people have to be an operator. So how do they solve that problem? They turn us all into operators. So technology does disrupt. Technology will take jobs. But if we prepare our people to understand that whatever your profession is, that AI, Gen AI and true AI can help you become more effective. But my lecture on future proofing says, you're gonna have a domain of expertise, right? You're gonna be good at something. Make sure you understand economics, right? People shy away from economics. They really go to finance, they really go to accounting. Accounting sucks, but sorry. They understand economics. Embrace design thinking. 2 people raised their hand in here on design thinking. Shame on you, right? You should all be deep in design thinking and how do I unleash that greatness, right? And so there's some things that we can do as humans to prepare ourselves for a world when technology is going to take more and more my task away. For example, personal example, I have a $2 calculator that does square roots faster than I'll ever do square roots. If my business was in square root optimization, I'm screwed, right? So it does square roots. I don't even worry about doing square roots anymore. I'm not even sure how to do a square root anymore on my own. I don't need to. I can use the little bit of brain that cells that it freed up to actually spend more time on economics and design thinking, for example.
Well, I just wanna the thinking
Less
for.
about losing your.
Oh, okay. It's about losing your own thinking skills. That was the worry that Henry Kissinger had. Thank you for correcting. Is that will we lose our critical thinking skills? Good. I don't know. The students I'm teaching, I teach Yoda. I teach make it work for you. Don't make it replace you. You still have to, critical thinking, logic is more important than ever before. So it certainly can. There may be classes of people who just give up and say, I'm going to let Gen AI make my decisions for me. I'm going to say, where should I go eat tonight? Gen AI is going to say, we're going to eat at McDonald's. And I'm going to say, it's my anniversary, 40th year anniversary. Or should I go to McDonald's, right? Gen AI doesn't give you an excuse for not making your own decisions. But it could happen. There may be people who do that. I don't think the people who are going to be successful, I don't think for a second the people who are going to be successful are going to do that. I think the people who are going to be successful are going to say, this is my own personal research assistant. It's going to do a lot of work for me. It's going to make me more effective. It's going to help me free up time to do other things, to think of more creative things. So, again, I can't look over the edge. I'm not smart enough, but I don't believe that the people I work with are going to get replaced and think they're going to get replaced by Gen AI. I think the ones I've been working with are thinking this thing is going to work for me. But again, Socratic method, think critical sort of thing.
It's sort of one of the key aspects for future education is the marketing. Once in a class, I heard from a student that the computer is smarter than us.
Yeah.
So,
Now we know that Gen AI has monkey tricks, right? Right. All it's doing is taking your question, you ask it, and it's build a bunch of tokens on data, and it finds data that matches and gives it back to you. It doesn't think. It's just finding and matching. It's like autocomplete on steroids, right? So it isn't thinking. It looks like it's thinking because the answers you get back are so well written like a human, because when a human talks, they must be smart, but it's not thinking. It's just matching material. And it's like a greater version of what Google should be. It's like Google 3.0 or Google 10.0. So people who think it's smarter than them, yeah, they don't understand what's going on. And because of that, they don't understand the risks of the answers you get from that may not be accurate. It's an approximation. It's based on a probability, right? Probabilities are never 100%. Except if you miss sending flowers to your wife on her 40th anniversary.
Yeah, what you're saying on that, I've found using, the various, chat, things like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Bard.
Yep.
Being AI, I have found, I guess you would call them hallucination across those different ones. Now you have one or two with similar or alike information, but others without. And back to the critical thinking, I guess I'm still old school. I go do my own research, and then I use the AI model to validate what I've found. And I have found them provide information that was contrary to what I think. And then going back to that whole critical thinking and starting to probe question, where did you get your information?
Yep.
And ultimately, I had them come back and say, I apologize, you're correct. I provided some speculation.
I had this methodology I showed you, the thinking like a data science methodology. Where did it go? Here it is.
I guess what I'm saying, I don't rely, just don't want.
Totally. So what we are doing, the methodology, what I liked about your comment and what we're trying to do in our class, you do your research first. You do it on your own. You use that research to build the prompt against what you're going to enter into all, like I said, test 3 of them, test 4 of them, enter the same prompt, and then have it, you know, ask it to embellish, ask it to validate, ask it to challenge you, to, right, and make it work for you. But you're right, in our class, we make the students fill out the templates first, and then they use the template, they type it up into a prompt, and they ship it back, and they test it against it to say, if I missed anything, what else should I be considering? And even sometimes, like I said before, it'll give you 4 or 5 things. Maybe one of them will be useful, maybe 2, which is good. So I got it for free. Or relatively, but it's a good point. Do the research first, and by the way, stay old school. Be critical thinking. Yeah, you go ahead and put it back up. All right, last question, let's do it. Do I think the well industries are becoming less emerging due to lack of data-driven approach? So that's a good question. They've all been great questions. I've worked with a couple of oil and gas companies. I think they're pretty smart. They've got a lot of data. They know how to use data very effectively in some aspects of their business. So I don't think that they're an example of an organization doing poor things with data analytics. I think they're pretty smart. Maybe they need to broaden how they think about them. They need to think about maybe being less in the oil and gas business and being more in the energy business, and how that might impact their value creation initiatives. But I think for their use cases, they're pretty good at using data and analytics to determine where am I going to drill, you know, how much am I going to produce, what kind of, they do inventory management pretty well using that. They do a lot of predictive maintenance. So the well industry, I think overall, is probably a good example of a company that does data and analytics pretty well. Probably not as well as casinos. Casinos are really good at it, right? Because they can tie directly making better decisions to making more money. So, but I think that the challenge for them is, how do I think more broadly about the fact that I should not just be in the oil and gas business, I should be in the energy business, and what does that mean more broadly? Because, you know, think about their distribution system and all the gas stations they have, and think about the challenge we're facing right now for EVs and having enough charging stations. Maybe that's a business they should get into. Actually talk to an oil and gas company about their plans to do that, leveraging all the assets they have access to. Anyway, I know we've run out of time. We've run over. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks. The questions were great. Again, I always learn from the questions. And if you have any other questions, find me on LinkedIn. Please don't be shy. Thanks.